So why didn't you just rent a truck and move yourself?
Once was enough. Smashed dishes, sore neck, family drama.
So moving yourself's not as easy as it looks?
That's why we used Mayflower. They packed, loaded, timed everything. No chaos, no chiropractor.
But isn't a mover more expensive?
Not really. After the truck rental, gas, time off, and broken stuff. Plus, I actually slept.
Okay, I get it.
Do yourself a favor. Move with Mayflower and relax. Moving? Go with the pros every step of the way. Get a free quote at mayflower.com.
You alright? So, some of you might know I've got a Patreon, some of you might not know. So, Patreon's a monthly subscription service where I put exclusive content on. And one of the things that's exclusive on there is I read through old books. Currently, I'm reading a book called The World's Strangest Crimes, which was written in the 1960s. And I thought what I'd do is I'd share one of those chapters with you here for free. You can hear it, it's not very long. I'm up to chapter something like 17 at the minute. I've just put that out today. Because I've not had a chance to edit down the cameo shows, I wanted to be able to give you a little extra show on here. So have a listen if you enjoy it and you want to hear the rest of the book and hear me read it and give little annotations through it, and some of it I do just make up and change the words as I'm reading it as well. If you like this, join the Patreon, mate. Patreon.com/worldaroundyou. There'll be a link in the description below. And if you join that as well on the £8.50 tier or the £10 tier, the ball flicker tier it's called, you'll also get sent a magnet each month of a picture of my previous work or some form of thing to do with my work on a magnet. So you'll get that sent to you, just included in your subscription. You also get all my ebooks, one of which I've been working on for the past 3 months or so. That's why I've been a bit slow on doing the cameo shows and that, and I've just been busy with that. So you can hear bits of that on there as well and see sneak peeks of that. You can read all the others included in your subscription if you join the £3 tier and up. There's a 7-day free trial on the £3 tier. So give them a go, mate. Use the link below and... here's chapter 13 of The World's Strangest Crimes. I've called the episode Couldn't Get Himself Off. Right, so we're back with chapter 13 now of The World's Strangest Crimes. This one's called The Gentle Art of Self-Investigation. So the picture is a guy that kind of looks like the ranchers on Red Dead 2. Looking at a woman dead next to a train track, sort of waving at her, which seems irrelevant. But it probably isn't. I'm going to guess that this one's about a guy who killed someone and then he goes and takes part in the investigation, which is what happens still to this day. I probably sound like I regret starting this, don't I? But it is one of them. I'm nearly halfway through the book now. Anyway, it is unusual in the history of crime for a murderer to be a representative of law and order and to have to initiate the investigation of a murder which he himself has committed. But this happened in South Africa in 1934. Wasn't there still some very dodgy politics going on though in South Africa in 1934? I'm sure they weren't they under an apartheid then as well, so it's not exactly like they had fucking... When railway detective Sergeant J.H. Coetzee of Pretoria, which sounds made up, Pretoria sounds like it would be used in like a sci-fi show, doesn't it really? It was called to set in motion the investigation of the death of a young woman whose body was found on a railway embankment a few miles down the line from Pretoria Station. She'd been brutally assaulted, mutilated, and shot through the head. The body was discovered early in the morning by a ganger. That's a ganger, that's not like somebody's name. It's not capitalised anyway. A ganger, I don't know what a ganger does. Who reported his horrific find to a railway policeman named Fritz, who was on duty at Pretoria Station. He in turn reported the incident to Detective Sergeant Coetzee, his superior in the railway police force. These are probably like PCSOs then, aren't they really, or transport police, where they're probably not like a proper copper, or they get looked down on by other coppers. But I think coppers look down on coppers anyway. Don't think any of them really like each other, kind of like teachers. An hour or so later, both Fritz and Coetzee hurried by motorbike to the scene of the crime. The girl's body was in an ugly condition. She was covered in blood and dirt and had been terribly disfigured. One ear had been almost torn from her head. A quick examination of the body suggested that an attempt had been made to strangle her, and that when this had failed, her assailant had attacked her with an iron bar. I started in my head smiling then, because I had the idea in my head that they were hitting her with, you know, one of them iron brew bars you used to be able to get, the chewy ones, like a one bar, but it was iron brew flavour. Her blood-stained clothing had been torn to shreds, and finally, although it was not revealed until the post-mortem, she'd been shot through the head and all. A careful inspection of the site disclosed the probable pattern of events. By analysing marks in the soft ground, it became apparent that the girl had survived for a short time even after she'd been taken for dead. At one point, a body had been placed across the railway track, presumably to be run over by a passing train to disguise the fact of murder, but she'd managed to crawl a few yards from the track before dying. See, that just seems sloppy, doesn't it, on the murderer's part there. Just, you didn't want to finish them off yourself. The police were called from Pretoria. That would be a good advert for some form of dildo, wouldn't it? Or a vibrator. Where the woman's like looking like she's going to die on the railway tracks and there's a train coming, but then the train changes rails, goes off into a tunnel, and she's just lying there like all, what looks like all beaten up, but she's just sweaty and that. And then it just says, fucking, or whatever you'd call it, the bullet train. Went for them times that you have to finish yourself off, and she just climbs off the railway tracks, crawls over, reaches into a drawer hidden into a rock, pulls out a vibrator, and then just starts strumming herself off with it. The police were called from Pretoria, and they arrived very quickly. Coatsy brought with them up to date on the events of the morning. It was obvious, he suggested, that the girl had been hit by a train and thrown clear of the track. The police acknowledged the suggestion, but made no comment. They carried out their own methodical and detailed examination of the site and drew their own conclusions. They discovered, for instance, that the girl had not been alone. In addition to her identifiable footprints, there were also those of a man, and it was very evident that in approaching the embankment they had climbed a fence running parallel to the railroad. There was no indication of violence or a struggle, which suggested that the girl and the unknown man had been friends or perhaps lovers right up until the moment of the murder. The body was removed to a mortuary in Pretoria. The post-mortem examination revealed that the girl had been shot in the head with a .22 caliber bullet. This had not at first been apparent because of her mutilated condition. The post-mortem also... She fucking went through it, this woman, didn't she, eh? Had her ear ripped off, left in front of a train to die, and shot in the head. The post-mortem also revealed another significant fact that the girl was pregnant. She carried no identification, or if she had, then her killer had removed the papers. For a time, it looked as though she was going to be another unsolved murder mystery, with evidence so slight that the police had no trails to pursue. However, the case was widely reported in the papers, which published a detailed description of the girl, who was fair with short hair. Detective Sergeant Coatsy himself took a very personal interest in the case. After all, the murder had taken place in his particular railway territory. Coatsy was something of a dedicated careerman and well connected in South African society. For one thing, he was engaged to marry the daughter of his immediate superior in the railway police organisation, and he was, in fact, living at his fiancée's home. For another, he was a popular and highly skilled rugby football player, an important game in South Africa, as I think they're the world champions at the minute. So they've kept that up. And there was a great deal of talk and press comment that he should be selected to play for the South African team. Sporting interests aside though, see that's where he's getting in his word count, Coatsy had been carrying out his own private investigation into the case of the dead girl, and had managed to discover a railway engine which had traces of blood and fragments of flesh adhering to its front, but unfortunately a pathological examination of the remains established beyond doubt that they were from a sheep which had been struck by the engine and weren't human at all. When it seemed as if the case was about to fade into obscurity, unsolved and unsolvable, the press publicity paid off. A letter came in from a farmer living more than 100 miles away from Pretoria. He thought it possible that it might be able to identify the dead girl. The police brought him to the town to view the body, and he recognised the girl as a young woman named Miss Opperman, who had been his domestic help. He also handed to the police a letter which had arrived for Miss Opperman after she'd left the farm for a rendezvous with death at the end of January. How very dramatic. It was a letter confirming arrangements for a meeting with a man. This is where that burn mark is in the paper. Arrangements for a meeting with a man in Pretoria, and it was signed by J.H. Coatsy. The farmer was additionally able to confirm that the Coetzee who had signed the letter was without a doubt railway detective Sergeant Coetzee. He knew quite a lot about Coetzee's clandestine relationship with the girl. He was able to tell the police that Miss Opperman had first met Coetzee at a dance 6 months earlier, and that they'd met on several occasions since then, and he had been found in bed together. Challenged by the police, Coetzee was baffled. The farmer's evidence was completely false. Either he'd wrongly identified the body, which in view of its mutilated condition was difficult to identify anyway, or by sheer coincidence he'd managed to turn up another man named Coetzee who'd gone off with Miss Opperman. As for himself, he had never even heard of Miss Opperman, let alone gone to bed with her. How could anyone suppose that he, a well-known public sportsman... What a fucking sentence. How could anyone suppose that he, a well-known public sportsman, could be cynical enough to investigate with dogged persistence a brutal murder which he himself was alleged to have committed? The farmer's story was ridiculous. Might have tried and read it all like that. Is that going to be annoying? Nevertheless, the farmer's story could not be easily dismissed. The evidence was still circumstantial, but on the strength of it, Coetzee was arrested and charged with murder. The trial took place 6 weeks later, but meanwhile the police were able to dig out prosecution evidence which proved to be damning. In the course of intensive investigations, they discovered that Coetzee, on the date in question, had sent a native railway constable to Pretoria station to meet Miss Opperman on her arrival. He was to give her a message. It was too hard to concentrate on the voice in this. He was to give her a message, which I'm pretty sure says massage, that she should wait there until he, Coetzee, joined her. The message had duly been delivered, and Miss Opperman had been waiting at the station. Later, she'd been observed leaving the station in the company of a man in a brown suit, and there was a witness to swear that he had seen Coetzee arrive at the station at about that time wearing such a brown suit. Finally, the police, in a search of Coetzee's home, found a supply of .22 revolver ammunition, but no trace of a gun, which might be the murder weapon, even though it was known that Coetzee was normally armed with a .22 revolver in the course of his duty. Is that annoying? It's probably annoying. At the trial, the prosecution suggested that the motive for murder was clearly that Miss Opperman's pregnancy, with Coetzee undeniably the father of a gestating child, represented a serious threat to Coetzee's career in the railway police and his pending marriage to the daughter of his superior officer. Under pressure from Miss Opperman, what if his superior officer had actually got this girl pregnant and been like, look, you're going to have to take the fall from me here, I'm not going to let you marry my daughter if you don't say that this is you that's been shagging this young girl here, got her pregnant, because my wife's going to kill me, my daughter will be mad, if you do this for me, that could be what happened. Could there be a twist? Under pressure from Miss Opperman at a time when she was 6 months pregnant and probably demanding either marriage or financial support, he had arranged for her to travel to Pretoria to meet him in order to discuss the situation. In the prosecution's view, they'd been unable to reach any kind of agreement. The railway embankment seemed an odd place for an intimate and possibly recriminative discussion with a pregnant woman, But at least it offered privacy and isolation, the conditions Coetzee would have been seeking if he'd had murder on the mind. Some point, in fear or anger, he had attempted to strangle her. When she was unconscious, he dragged her body onto the railway track and had savagely beaten her with an iron bar to make it appear as if she'd been struck by a train and killed. Finally, just in case she wasn't properly dead and the train might not arrive in time, because as is known, the South African trains would very rarely arrive on time. He'd shot her through the head with his official .22 police revolver. The prosecution's case was admittedly strong, and there was only a feeble defence, concentrating on points of allegedly inconsistent detail. Defending counsel put it to the jury that Coetzee couldn't have been the father of Miss Opperman's unborn child if one examined closely the dates on which they'd met, when intimacy might be presumed to have taken place, and related that timetable to the pathological estimate of the age from conception of the fetus. Fucking hell. This particular exercise in correlation was not taken very seriously in court. No, I'm glad here they've thrown science out the window. an attempt were made to prove that the male footprints on the embankment were not those of Coates's. Right, an idea here. If you're going to leave footprints, why not just like glue an extra pair of shoes to your shoes underneath that are a different size to yours? That, and then you leave different footprints. Why is that not a thing that exists? And that, in any case, according to entries in his diary, he had been elsewhere on certain occasions when he was supposed to have been with Miss Opperman. The prosecution claimed that these diary entries had been written in after the murder. It was also put forward by the defence that although Coatsey went to Pretoria Station on the night of the 31st of January to meet Miss Opperman, she hadn't turned up. On the other hand, the native constable had testified that he in fact met her and acted as escort for a short period. Why did he bring this other guy into it? But it was impossible for the defence to counter the prosecution's strongest point. Namely, why had Coatsey denied all knowledge of Miss Opperman when first challenged by the police when the farmer had produced a letter to Miss Opperman bearing Coatsey's own signature? There's a little cliffhanger. We'll leave it there and we'll pick up with this one in a little while, as long as there's enough left. Oh, actually, fuck it. There's only another page. We'll carry on. Virtually the only demonstrable fact in the accused's favour was that, despite the incredibly violent mutilation of the girl, no traces of blood were ever found on Coates's clothes. The prosecution suggested that whilst committing the murder, he'd worn a clown costume, complete with a red wig, red nose and big orange shoes, which he'd later destroyed and there's no evidence of. Presumably, he'd also destroyed his shoes and trousers. Under the circumstances, however, with the evidence heavily weighed against him, it was not surprising that Coatsey was found guilty. A man who had started with the advantage of being assigned to investigate a murder committed by himself had failed to get away with the crime, but other extraneous factors were to intervene surprisingly to save his life. What? Although found guilty and therefore liable to the death penalty, Coatsey benefited by a new South African law passed just a few days before his trial. This law gave a judge power to pass a lesser sentence than death upon a convicted murderer, provided there was a recommendation of mercy from the jury. Since Coatsey was a well-known sporting figure in South African circles, and therefore vulnerable to malicious rumour and publicity, the jury decided that the charge of paternity made by the dead Miss Opperman might well have been false. There was no denying the fact of a pregnancy, but this did not necessarily prove that Coatsey was the father of the child. Such a charge, if false, would constitute a severe provocation to a man whose career and future marriage were at stake. In any case, it was the woman's fault. It's because of Miss Opperman basically killed herself. What this was an extra few steps towards suicide from Miss Opperman, the South African lady who seems to have been taken advantage of. There was no denying the fact of a pregnancy. Such a charge, if false, we've read this. In any case, we've read that. It seemed obvious that the crime had not been coldly premeditated, but had been committed on impulse, perhaps in an instant of uncontrollable anger and resentment. The jury, therefore, added a rider to their verdict recommending mercy. The judge therefore sentenced Coatsey to life imprisonment with hard labour, but he made it clear that he was unhappy at having to pass such a severe sentence on a reputable citizen who had acquitted himself in a manly fashion on the sporting fields, and who had shown such a heroic demeanour throughout his terrible fortnight of trial. What the fuck? He's on... Coatsey went to prison instead of the gallows by a fortuitous change in the South African penal law. Now we're repeating ourselves at a timely moment. He was probably the only brutal murderer in history to receive the compliments and commiseration of the judge because of his prowess in rugby. But that was a terrible one to read. Bad anyway, because of the story's like pretty shit for the woman, innit? But he spells rugby wrong. It's rugger there at the end. And then he just repeats himself over and over in the last couple of paragraphs and makes it very confusing, all that stuff about clown costumes and stuff. The next one we've got is about dolls. So because we've finished one there, I might leave it just this one for this week, and then we'll give you another one coming up, maybe next week or the week after or so. Tried a little video I put out as well before on here. I'll probably put it out. I think I put it out yesterday. With the looking at that Riptide music video for Hidden Messages, mate. Go and give that a go. So like I said at the start, if you want to hear the rest of them, join me Patreon. There's loads of bonuses. You'll also get a message to tell you when the next Rap Pencil case will be made available as well if you're a paying member. There is the free option of joining it, which gets you pretty much absolutely nothing apart from the odd video that I record and isn't really suitable for going onto TikTok and that. So you can go and watch that on there for free. But if you want the 7-day free trial, you have to join the £3 tier. You probably still have to give your details and stuff, but you can cancel it within the 7 days, and then it doesn't continue the subscription, so you get it for free, if that makes sense. But either way, go and join it. Obviously, on Patreon, there's no adverts on stuff. There may be things where I'm telling you about Fat Pete's prints in posts and stuff, so you don't miss out on discount codes. But you also get access as well to episodes that aren't out yet, so episodes that aren't public, video versions of episodes. So bearing in mind that I'm currently about 1 year and 3 months ahead, maybe 2 years ahead of shows that are actually recorded that haven't gone out yet. There's a lot more stuff on there. There's over 600 posts on there, mate. So you might as well give it a go, see what you think. Otherwise, the shows will continue as normal on here, and these will continue on Patreon either way. I just thought I'd give you a little sneak peek, because no one knows these things exist. So, fucking do the poll, leave a 5-star rating if you can on whatever you're listening to. Share the episode with someone, mate. Share the other episodes with someone. Follow World Around You's pod on Instagram to help me grow that Instagram page, because it's not letting me follow people anymore, because I seem to follow too many people too quickly, and it thinks I'm a spam account, which is annoying. So I need people to find it organically now. But anyway, thank you for listening, and I'll fucking see you in a bit, mate.
They're part of the family, but let's be honest, they're also pretty tough on your floors. From muddy paws after a walk, to spilled water bowls, to claws shedding, and the occasional accident, your floors see it all. That's why S&G Carpet & More has flooring that's built for the whole pack. Choose from waterproof luxury vinyl plank, laminate, hardwood, and durable carpet designed to stand up to busy families and the pets you love. They're beautiful, easy to clean, and made for everyday life. Even better, during our Built for the Whole Pack event, save 25% on select flooring all August long. S&G helps families find the perfect floor with expert guidance, professional installation, and free in-home consultations where we bring the samples directly to you. Visit one of our many showrooms, schedule your free in-home consultation at sgcarpet.com, or call 1 Ton of Carpet today. Built for the Whole Pack ends August 31st.
S&G, more than